You help ensure that your son and all the victims of gun violence are not forgotten. They didn't die in vain. Designed to reduce gun violence and save lives, and I'm so proud of the tremendous progress we made since then. The year before I came to the presidency, the murder rate was the highest increase on record. Don't underestimate what you've done. It's amazing what you've done. You changed people's minds.
Supreme Court drama. The Supreme Court delivered a legal bombshell on Friday, standing firm on a federal law that disarms domestic abusers. Armed rights groups were left fuming as the court declared that the prohibition did not trample the Second Amendment, a decision that even the most dedicated legal watchers found riveting. The 8-1 decision was one of the term's most anticipated. It tempered the impact of the justice's own explosive 2022 ruling, which had sparked a surge of legal challenges against armed laws nationwide. Chief Justice John Roberts, usually the picture of judicial stoicism, wrote for the majority with an unusual clarity, stating that the court had no trouble agreeing that threats should be denied weapon access. His words, "Our tradition of firearm regulation allows the government to disarm individuals who present a credible threat to the physical safety of others," were aimed squarely at quelling the chaos Bruin had ignited. The majority, a rare alliance of the court's conservatives and liberals, came together in a move that could stabilize similar federal arm regulations challenged post-Bruin. Roberts gently rebuked lower courts, accusing them of misunderstanding the methodology of recent Second Amendment rulings. It was a moment of judicial correction, an attempt to restore order after the Bruin chaos. Justice Clarence Thomas, ever the maverick, penned a fiery 32-page dissent. He stuck to his arms, pun intended, arguing the absence of any historical precedent for revoking Second Amendment rights due to possible crime. Thomas, who held the Bruin majority opinion, was unyielding, warning that today's decision risks infringing on broader Second Amendment rights. The case's focal point, Zaki Rahimi, provided a dramatic backdrop. Rahimi, a Texas man with a penchant for gunfire, he even shot into the air at a Whataburger after a friend's credit card was declined, challenged his conviction under a 1994 law barring those under domestic crime restraining orders from possessing arms. His legal team argued the law was incompatible with the Second Amendment post-Bruin, a stance the Fifth Circuit Court shockingly supported. The Biden administration and domestic crime advocacy groups were quick to celebrate. President Joe Biden, seizing a victory lap, declared survivors of domestic crime and their families will still be able to count on critical protections. Douglas' letter from the Brady Group heralded it as an important victory for armed crime and domestic crime prevention. But not everyone was cheering. The NRA's Randy Kozuk downplayed the ruling, insisted it didn't endorse other controversial arm restrictions. He emphasized that the decision only affected those proven dangerous. While the ruling provided immediate relief to arm control advocates, it also set the stage for future battles. The court hinted at upcoming cases questioning whether non-violent felons and drug offenders should also be barred from arm ownership. Notably, one such prohibition affected Hunter Biden, who was convicted of violating a law that prohibits drug users from possessing arms, an issue the Supreme Court might soon tackle. Adding a layer of intrigue, Justice Samuel Alito was conspicuously absent for the second day as opinions were handed down. The court remained tight-lipped about his no-show, fueling speculation and gossip in the legal community. Arm control advocates like Shannon Watts of Moms Demand Action voiced relief but noted the case's extreme nature, underscoring the High Court's willingness to entertain such challenges. Meanwhile, domestic crime victims advocates stressed the ongoing risks and the necessity of strong protection orders. Amy Sanchez of the Battered Women's Justice Project praised the decision, but Ruth Glenn of Survivor Justice Action reminded everyone that the fight for comprehensive protections continues. The decision highlighted deep divides and varying perspectives on armed rights and safety. For some, it was a triumph of common sense over extremism. For others, it represented a precarious balance between rights and regulation. In the end, the Supreme Court's ruling was more than a legal decision. It was a statement about the balance of power, safety, and rights in America. As the nation watches, the debate over arm control and the Second Amendment is far from over.
For the Senate to consider my legislation, the Banning Unlawful Machine Gun Parts, or BUMP, Act. More than 20,000 people gathered for a large outdoor music festival. No one could have anticipated the nightmare that was about to unfold then. Then over the music, they started to hear what at first people thought were fireworks. Complete panic erupted. Rapid gunfire rained down on the crowd with shots so close together that they seemed to almost bleed into each other. Concert goers ran in every direction, searching for cover where there was none.
Domestic crime arm ban. The U.S. Supreme Court has delivered a major blow to armed rights extremists, upholding a federal ban that prevents individuals under domestic crime restraining orders from possessing arms. The ruling in U.S. v. Rahimi was supported by 8 justices, with only Clarence Thomas dissenting, leaving in place crucial protections against a significant source of armed crime in America. Chief Justice John Roberts, writing the majority opinion, stated that temporarily disarming individuals posing a credible threat to the physical safety of another does not violate the Second Amendment. Since the founding, the nation's armed laws have included regulations to stop individuals who threaten physical harm to others from misusing arms, he wrote. The judgment is a sigh of relief for arm control advocates who feared the court's conservative majority might dismantle these protections. Attorney General Merrick Garland welcomed the ruling, highlighting that the common-sense prohibition is entirely consistent with the Second Amendment. The Justice Department, he assured, would continue enforcing this critical statute. Armed control groups and domestic crime victims also expressed their relief. LaShae Cretain, a fellow with Everytown for Armed Safety and a survivor of domestic crime, emphasized that the ruling means fewer children will witness their mothers, sisters, aunts, and friends experience armed crime at the hands of abusers like mine did. The stakes in the Rahimi case were sky high, given the devastating toll of armed domestic abusers. U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Prelogar pointed out in oral arguments that women living with domestic abusers are 5 times more likely to be murdered if the abuser has access to an arm. Kelly Roscom, Director of Law and Policy at the Johns Hopkins Center for Armed Crime Solutions, noted that armed domestic abusers are dangerous to their intimate partners, family, friends, law enforcement, and the broader community. This decision rebukes the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which had previously ruled the ban unconstitutional. Known as the most hard-right appeals court in the country, the Fifth Circuit has been a hotbed for aggressive cases, including the recent Mife-Pristone case, in which the Supreme Court also sided against the appeals court to uphold access to the abortion pill. 6 of the 17 judges of the Fifth Circuit were appointed by Donald Trump. The Rahimi ruling marks a significant step back from the hardline stance on armed access previously laid out by the Supreme Court. 2 years ago, in the landmark New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin case, the court's 6 conservative justices allowed handguns to be carried in public in most instances. They stated that any restrictions on ownership had to confront to the history and tradition of arms regulations from the 18th century, raising fears among armed control groups that America's already lax regulations might unravel further. Now, Chief Justice Roberts has sought to clarify and soften some of Bruin's rough edges. He noted that some courts have misunderstood the methodology of our recent Second Amendment cases.
It does not have a state-level ban on bump stocks, and so now here in Pennsylvania, bump stocks are, for all intents and purposes, totally legal.
What happened in Las Vegas, it is a terrifying thing to consider the great evil that can be committed by one of these, practicality, a machine gun on the street. So it is something that is scary.
These precedents were not meant to suggest a law trapped in amber. The Rahimi case centered on Zaki Rahimi, a drug dealer placed under a restraining order after abusing his girlfriend in a Texas parking lot and shooting at a bystander. Allegedly involved in 5 more shootings, Rahimi was arrested with arms at his home, violating the ban on armed possession for those under a domestic crime restraining order. Rahimi challenged the ban as unconstitutional and won support from the Fifth Circuit, leading to the Supreme Court's intervention. In his opinion, Roberts framed the decision to uphold the ban as common sense. He wrote, "When an individual poses a clear threat of physical crime to another, the threatening individual may be disarmed." This view, he added, fits within the nation's regulatory tradition. Justice Clarence Thomas, clearly displeased with his peers, issued a 32-page dissent. He reiterated the formula he and his fellow hard-right justices favor, that armed prohibitions are only constitutional if they are consistent with the nation's historical tradition of armed regulation. Thomas argued, not a single historical regulation justifies the statute at issue. This dissent showcases the ongoing tension within the court regarding armed rights. While Thomas and other hard-right justices push for a strict historical interpretation, Roberts and the majority have taken a more pragmatic approach, acknowledging modern realities and the need for sensible regulations to protect public safety. Armed control advocates are celebrating this ruling as a victory, but the battle is far from over. The Supreme Court's decision signals a willingness to uphold certain armed regulations, providing a crucial check against the most extreme interpretations of the Second Amendment. However, with a deeply divided court and a conservative majority, future rulings will continue to shape the landscape of armed rights and regulations in America. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.